The Kiwi Ears Aether is what I would call the blend of the traditional and modern planar. It takes the brightness and the details of the traditional planars with the musicality and warmth of the modern planars. But what is it really siding with? And is it really any that good? Because everyone's been hyping this for the past few months? But is it really actually any that good? Let's talk about it. Starting with the unboxing, I think the package of this is one of the best looking that Kiwi Ears has ever done. And as for the accessories itself, I think it's also pretty decent. Nothing really too special. You got a lot of ear tips, which is really something that a lot of brands should really start doing even at this price range, but the quality of the ear tips can be improved. The case is your usual Kiwi Ears case. I like it. It's spacious enough. I can put all of the ear tips in and the IEMs itself, and even change the cable and still have enough space for that. So I think I really do like that. Moving on to the build and fit, this is a very large IEM because of its 15.3mm full-size planar driver. So people with smaller ears, I'm so sorry, this is probably not going to fit with you. And if you do have medium or larger ears, this is probably going to be fine with some tip rolling, at least in my case. I ended up using a different ear tip for this one, particularly my usual TRI Clarions, but your mileage may vary depending what you feel would fit your ear better. Aesthetically, I really like that faceplate, the whole silver border with a glittery faceplate and minimal branding. I think Kiwi Ears still got the sales for making really good looking IEMs, even if it is not that flashy as something like their older sets like the orchestra and stuff. But I really do like how this looks. It's a resin material, so it's not going to feel as premium or as fancy, but that aids it in being a pretty lightweight IEM. What's also kind of lightweight is the cable. It's not really my favorite kind of cable. It feels cheap, but it is usable. It is non-irritable. But it's not 4.4, which arguably something that the Kiwi Ears would probably really appreciate. So, and as for the sound, this is the, I would call, modern planar tuning mixed in with a little bit of detail and sparkle up the top end. So for the sound signature, it has a neutral leaning, planar sound that's analytical, but still very engaging. And looking at the frequency response graph, yep, it is very much planar looking, especially when it comes to that upper mids to treble. If you are sensitive to upper mids to treble, you are going to feel it here, especially for people who are sensitive to the air regions. But I would say this is one of the most refined sounding with this kind of tuning that is in the market right now. Now for the bass, I will say this is a very well controlled bass, very detailed and not overly boosted. There's a little bit of warmth to compensate for the brightness, but it's not overly so that it colors the mid-range too much. It's punchy enough with the speed of planar, but it has enough thickness and warmth to not make it sound overly thin or analytical. The mids are transparent and very clean. It is a little bit thin sometimes, especially if you throw it in a bright track, but that I would say is something that's common with a lot of planar IEMs, and this is probably one of the better ways or better ones to present the mid-range because it doesn't sound too thin, it doesn't sound too lean because of the warmth coming from the bass. And as for the treble, very crisp and revealing. There's a bit of sharpness in higher volumes if you do crank the volume up pretty high, which I'll talk about later. But I would say that unless you're sensitive to treble, this is a very nice and detailed treble presentation. Very detailed, very analytical, and just very crisp sounding. You're not going to find any details spared with this kind of sound, with this kind of treble, and I really appreciate that Kiwi Ears was able to handle this much treble and not sound just grating and edgy and grainy, which is very common for a lot of planar IEMs, hence why I call this a modern planar with a little bit more detail. Now, as for source and amplifier pairing, I would say that this is better off with the warmer sources, at least in my experience, to balance out the treble energy, but neutral sources will do really well. I don't recommend brighter sources, but if you're masochistic, go right ahead, throw this into some Heidi's XO or TP35 by EPZ, so that's on you. And for volume scaling, I would say that this is a medium to low volume listening IEM. Higher volumes for me is a little bit too much already, gets a bit too hot. But I would say it's still pretty good in higher volumes. Just keep in mind you don't want to get hearing damage because of earphones, so keep that in mind. Now, for my short listening experience, I will say that this is just a phenomenally technical set. I genuinely love how technically capable this is while balancing out the sound in a genuinely compelling way. I don't think it is overly analytical. I don't think it's overly musical. It balances out in a really, really well and a really nice way. And if you love like just really, really high detail retrieval, you will love this. If you love jazz, if you love vocal pop, soul, R&B, this is perfect. But if you're listening to like brighter mixes already, like what, Earth, Wind and Fire, like Polyphia, yeah, this might not be the set for you. It might be a bit too aggressive, and if you do lower the volume too much, you might find it a bit too soft, so keep that in mind. Now for some comparisons, first and foremost, the F1 Pro, and the Aether is essentially just a more superior IEM overall, but expectedly for the price, because the F1 Pro is what, like $90, $100? This is $169, $170, and that's to be expected. I would say that if you're coming from the F1 Pro, this is a really good upgrade because it has basically every single feature, every single thing that made the F1 Pro great, but improves upon especially the smoothness and the refinement of the treble. So yeah, that's for the F1 Pro. Next, let's compare it to the Legend, specifically the Tangzu Zetianwu, the Legend. And the Aether is a quote-unquote more analytical sounding, but only because of the emphasis being just a little bit more crisp. But the airiness has a far better emphasis on the Legend, and the airiness is also far more extended on the Legend, so it is just a, I would say, better extended set. But the linearity of the Legend is also quite noticeable compared to the Aether, because the Aether, it is pretty, you know, pretty neutral as planars go, but there is a little bit of warmth, there's a little bit of like upper mids emphasis. The Legend doesn't have any of that. It's literally just as flat as it can get with that crazy amount of air. So if you want a lot of air but still want the same technical or a little bit more technicals kind of sound, because it's a bit more intimate but it's a lot more in your face kind of details, go for the Legend. But if you want something a bit more calm, something more relaxing but still very much analytical and detailed with a bit of warmth, as I mentioned, go for the Aether. Now compared to the Lecture S12, times have changed, old man. There's a new kid on the block. Although it is a more expensive set than when the S12 came out, which is $149, I still think that if you're coming from the S12, the Aether is genuinely the best thing that you can get. I can't think of any other sets, even the S12 Pro, I would say. Even the S12 Pro, if you're looking for an upgrade, the Aether is the best one. And lastly, the SIMGOT ET142. Very different. That is a lot more modern compared to the Aether. Less treble emphasis on that thing. Much better tactility. It does not sound like a planar IEM whatsoever, because the Aether still sound like a planar IEM. The ET142 just sounds crazy good. I genuinely cannot imagine how they were able to do that. SIMGOT just went crazy with how they tuned that planar magnetic IEM, but it does not sound like a planar. This does. This has better details, better separation, but that has better tactility, better engaging sound, better punchiness. So that's my comparisons. Let's move on to my conclusion. So the Kiwi Ears Aether is a fantastically technical, analytical, but really well-balanced planar IEM for $169 or 170 US. I genuinely cannot imagine just how well they utilize this 15.3mm driver in the Aether, tuned it to this level, while still not really compromising what makes planar sound, you know, planar. It's not quite modern like the S08 or the S15, but it does have the soul of something like the S12 or the Timeless, and that's what I really appreciate with the Aether. It doesn't really stray from what made planar IEMs good in the first place, and that's probably the thing that makes me want to recommend this to you guys. So that's my conclusion on the Aether. I think it's a really good IEM if you're looking for something analytical but very well balanced. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, consider giving me a like. If you like this video, or if you want to see more of my content, subscribe, check out the Discord, check out Audio Notions, check out my socials. And with that, Obie Audio, out.